Welcome to Loops exercise. So in this exercise we have a total of 7 tasks to work with. And the first one is as follows: convert a for loop into a while loop. And what I want you to do is simply copy and paste this code here into an empty cell. And you're dealing with this particular variable called numbers. And it's a list of numbers from 0 to 100, which you can create either way, but of course you can just copy and paste it into the empty cell. And if you run this for loop code, you'll get this output here of 0 to 250. And what I want you to do is simply create the equivalent of the for loop into a while loop. So you should generate the same output with a while loop of 0 to 250. Okay, so if we just take a look at the hints here. Number 1, the while loop should have x less than len numbers. Number 2, the most important line of code in a while loop to prevent an infinite loop is the x plus equals 1. So make sure you put this line of code somewhere in your while loop. The number 3, create an empty list called second, which is equivalent to what we have here for the for loop. And then lastly, number 4, start with an initial value of 0. Okay, so moving on to task 2, use len with control flow in a for loop. So you have a variable called rep, which is a list of names from Joe to Rachel. And then I want this desired output of Joe as a replicant all the way to Rachel as a replicant. And as you can see here, we also have not 3 times for 3 different names, Mike, Deckard, and Wallace. And so the hints as follows are as number 1, in the for loop, use the len function 2 times. Number 2, use the print statement twice. And number 3, the if statement requires 2 OR operators. Okay, so moving on to the next task. For loop with nested while loop. So you're going to have a while loop that's inside of a for loop. So you have the for loop here, and you've got to fill in these lines of code with these hashtags here. And if it says add code here, you put the line of code directly in the same line. If on the other hand it says add code VV, you put the code underneath this line here. So it would be here, for instance, where K is. Okay, so you've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of code to fill in. And the desired output is as follows: human all the way to time to finish. So clearly these are print statements outside of the loop. And it's question, cell within, and you have cell within a total of 4 times, and you have cell a total of 2 times, and also interlinked 2 times, along with these questions here. Okay, so the hints as follows for this output are: number 1, use a for loop with range to repeat while loop, which we've already got actually, as you can see here. So it's repeating the while loop twice. Then of course you have to use the k plus equals 1, which is the most important line of code to prevent the infinite loop. And also k less than 8 in the while loop. The number 3, use if, 2 elif statements and an else statement in your while loop. So you've got control flow with inside the while loop. And then lastly, number 4, total of 6 different print statements. 4 are inside the while loop. So you've actually already got 4 of these print statements. You just need to add another 2. So moving on to the next task. Nested for loop in a while loop. Okay, so this is the opposite essentially. And it's quite similar in some ways. So you're working with this code here, which you simply copy and paste into an empty cell. You've got the initial values, the values that are going to be for x and y. So it's incrementing by 2 for y and incrementing by 1 for x. And if we just take a look at the outputs, we have starts and ends, which are quite similar as you can tell. They've got the print statements outside of the loop, similar to the previous example. And the hints as follows are: number 1, code a nested for loop inside a while loop with y less than 8. The number 2, initial values of y and x are 0. The number 3, 2 print statements outside the while loop, which should be obvious. And then lastly, number 4, use a range of 4 to 9 in the for loop. Okay, so moving on to task 5. For loop to fix student names. So we have some names here in the students variable: Natalie, M, Faye, Callum, and Tara, and we want to fix these problems here. So of course we've got one that just has M. We have a capital A here, and we have a space here. we want this to be converted into a tuple with all the caps for 4 names. And the hints as follows are: create an empty list. Number 2, use len and if statement. Number 3, use also the upper, replace, and append methods for list. And then lastly, number 4, convert output to a tuple, which should be quite obvious. Okay, so moving on to task 6. For loop with added values from dictionary. So this is quite straightforward. All you're doing is simply adding the values from each of the elements of the keys K1 and K2 to generate this output here with the end loop. So the hints as follows are: use 1 for loop with range, and 2, add the values from both keys together. Okay, lastly, task 7, which is quite a hefty task, and that is while loop with 3 inputs. So what I want you to do is work with this code here, all of this code, and copy and paste it into an empty cell. And you're working with the dictionary called prices and an empty cell, or an empty list, excuse me, called total. And what you have to do is simply copy and paste this code 2 more times, because we're going to have 2 more inputs. We have a total of 3 inputs, and the first one here is num1, so you're going to have num2 and num3. And you're also going to have to put an else statement below here with the append function being used to grab each of the values here. So for this one, let's say for instance you say yes to popcorn, then what this code should do, it's missing some code here with the else statement, is that if you say yes, it should append the number 5 to total. And conversely, if you were to do no, then it won't add any value at all, it would be empty. And let's say you have for num2, it asks, would you like soda? If you say yes, then it will append the value of soda, which is 2, to total. And likewise with veggie burger, it will do the same, it will append number 7 to total. And then we'll add up all the values together, and you get the output of how much it will be. So we have string sum total, and then enjoy the film. And also you could have quits if you want to break out of the while loop. Okay. So the examples of the output, there's 3 in total here, just to make sure there's absolute clarity. So let's say ask, when you run the code, would you like popcorn with film? No. Soda drink? No. Veggie burger? No. Then $0. Enjoy the film. If on the other hand you say yes and no, and that would be $7. Enjoy the film. Would you like popcorn with the film? You say quits. Then enjoy the film. As the hints as follows are: number 1, create 2 more inputs and name them num2 and num3 as said before at the beginning. Then number 2, for num2, print would you like a soda, and for num3, print would you like a veggie burger. And then number 3, use the append function 3 times by grabbing values from the prices dictionary. Then number 4, use the break statement a total of 4 times. So you'll notice that you got it actually a total of, if we look at the top here, I've only got it 1 here, so if you copy and paste 2 more of these, then you have 3, so you need to add another one, so a total of 4 altogether. And then number 5, make sure you have the plus equals 1 to prevent an infinite loop, that's very important. And lastly, number 6, use 3 else statements. Okay, well, give that a go. Don't worry if you're not able to get the last task, it's quite long-winded and tough. Give them all a try, and I will be showing the solutions in the next lecture. Thanks.